Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for another month of Swift webinar this afternoon. My name is Hannah Crapeau, and I'm the Content Marketing Manager at Certiport. We're so happy to have you join us, and we're excited to be able to tackle a really important topic today about preparing high school students for the app economy. We'll be learning from two amazing educators. The first is Brian Fouty, and the second is Mike Yakubowski. He's going to have to tell me if I pronounced that correctly. Hopefully that was at least in the ballpark. But Brian has been part of the team at Trumbull Career and Technical Center for 26 years. During his career, he has taught math, special education, and is now in charge of the district's iPad one-to-one initiative, as well as teaching computer science and app development in the Swift programming language. Brian started teaching Swift in 2014 and has been developing iOS apps in Objective-C and Swift since 2011. Brian was recognized as an Apple Distinguished Educator in 2013. Mike has been teaching engineering and currently serves as the CTE Department Chair at Coppell High School in Coppell, Texas. Mike has been honored as an Apple Distinguished Educator as well in the spring of 2017. In 2015, the Metroplex Technology Business Council named Mike the Tech Titan of the Future for High Schools. Mike has been the CISD since 2003 and started the CHS School of Engineering in 2006. The program is a four-year pre-college engineering program focusing on design in which learners work on projects that prepare them for college STEM disciplines. Activities expose learners to design, applications of math and science, electronics, kinematics, and coding, which is why we've brought Mike here to talk with us today. His engineering learners explore STEM careers and fields through the range of hands-on experiences, including developing apps in response to challenges within their own communities. Mike has a passion for learning that he shares with schools and districts around the country. And so we're so happy to have both Mike and Brian join us this afternoon. But before we dive into our discussion with them, we'll pass the mic over quickly to Sabrina Beck, Certiport's Swift Program Manager, to just get us started.
Thank you, Hannah. I'm really excited to be here. Thank you to Brian and Mike for joining us as well. I'm excited to hear what you have to share with us in a little bit. I wanted to go over, just give a brief overview of our new program and talk about the pathway to achievement for our high school candidates. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right, can you see that okay?
Looks great.
Awesome. Great. All right, so as Hannah mentioned, my name is Sabrina Beck. I'm the product manager for the app development with Swift certification program at Certiport, and we have made several exciting updates to the program this year. I'm just going to briefly highlight those for us this afternoon. So those who are familiar with the Swift program, when we launched the Develop in Swift program in 2018, Swift Level 1 exam, at the time was aligned with the app development with Swift course that was available at the time and with Xcode 10. Since 2018, Xcode has seen new releases and new features and functionalities come to help app developers. Xcode 12 is the most current release that the Swift program aligns to. And last summer, Apple released a new Develop in Swift curriculum, restructuring the course material from the App Development with Swift program into two courses. The first course, Develop in Swift Fundamentals, teaches learners fundamental iOS app development skills and helps them build basic fluency in Xcode source and UI editors. The second course, Develop in Swift Data Collections, builds on that knowledge by teaching learners the tools they need to build more complex and capable apps. Both courses are intended to be taught in a single semester in higher ed or in a full year in high school. So let's take a look at the new courseware. Develop in Swift is a comprehensive coding offering from Apple for ages 14 and up. The curriculum prepares students for college or a career in app development using the Swift programming language. It's complemented with free online professional learning for educators and certifications for students, and it's all made possible with Mac. All books are available for download for Mac at the Apple Bookstore, and it's apple.co/teaching code. Earlier this year, we announced the release of 2 new app development with Swift exams that align with the new curriculum and with Xcode 12. So the first exam that we released was the Develop in Swift Certified User exam, and it aligns with the Develop in Swift Fundamentals curriculum based on Xcode 12. It certifies candidates have the knowledge of core concepts and practices that professional Swift programmers use on a daily basis. The App Development Swift Certified User Exam and practice tests are available now, and we are releasing localizations in Chinese Simplified and Spanish at the end of this month, which is pretty awesome. So the second exam that we announced and just released is the App Development with Swift Certified Associate. It's a new exam in the Develop in Swift certification portfolio. It's based on Xcode 12 and is aligned to the Develop in Swift Explorations curriculum. It is designed to certify knowledge of the impact of computing and apps on society, economies, and cultures, all while exploring iOS app development. As I mentioned, this exam is available now, and Chinese Simplified and Spanish exams and practice tests will be available in November of this year. So if you want to know which exams we currently have available and the release dates of any exams for any of our programs that are scheduled or announced, you can visit our exams detail page at certiport.com/product. So this is the really cool part that I wanted to talk about. So these new courses and exams are designed to help high school and higher ed students earn recognition for their Swift knowledge. This part in particular is the high school pathway, and Explorations is designed to help learners with little to no computer science background learn code with the Swift programming language. It is ideal for high school students exploring computer science tracks, but can also be taught in higher education as a course for non-computer science majors or as an elective. Fundamentals and data collections is designed for learners who possess basic coding knowledge and experience and want to build their app development skills. Both courses can be taught in an advanced high school course, although we do tend to see these taught more predominantly in higher ed for computer science majors. Regardless of the pathway that you choose to teach, by the time students complete data collections, they will have the skills that they need to develop successful apps that will service in the App Store. So with that, Hannah, I want to turn back the time to you and Brian and Mike for some Q&A.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Sabrina. That was helpful to get us kind of all on the same page about this program since we've had a lot of changes recently. So as we dive in, I wanted to give Mike and Brian a chance to introduce themselves as well. So Brian, if it's okay, I'll put you on the spot. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your experience in app development?
Sure. I think you covered it pretty well. I decided when I got a cart of iPads in 2011 for my math classroom, I thought, this is really great. I should learn to make some apps for it to get my students a native experience rather than trying to use everything through a web browser. So I spent the summer of 2011 coding and then cursing and then coding some more to learn Objective-C. What I can say is I wish I had the tools available then that I have available now to both teach and learn that, because it was some rough going. And I started teaching Swift in my math classroom in 2014, just using AirDrop and having kids code, just write out simple Swift scripts in Swift 1 and just airdropping to me, and I would put it into Xcode and the very first version of Playgrounds and execute it that way. And we've come a long way since then. So the tools are so much more vibrant and the language is just keeps getting better every year.
Love it. I love that you expressed the frustrations that you came across, because I'm sure we have teachers who are just getting started who feel that same pain.
Well, yeah, and that's why there's the sayings. You know what the #1 language used in programming is? Foul language.
Yeah.
Foul language, and there's a reason.
I love that. That's perfect. Mike, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us about your experience in app development? Mike, I think we probably have you on
Yeah,
mute.
I didn't.
There we go. Okay.
Yeah, it's just like with my kids. So, like you had said earlier, I teach engineering actually, and we do coding. All my students need coding, and most of them are afraid of text-based coding. And I've tried a lot of different things, a lot of different languages to help them along the way to just get more comfortable with it. When I got a chance to go to the developer conference in 2016, learned about Swift, it just got really super excited and I actually hijacked a cart of MacBooks from another teacher who wasn't really using them that year to get kids into it. And they took to it, just like ducks to water. They just jumped in. They're like, oh my gosh, this is easy. I didn't realize that I could do this. And that was the neat thing is every year, my students with this, they're just like, oh, wow, I can do this. And I love that because they come in afraid, and that's what I like. And they're engineering students. They're not, most of them aren't into computer science. So it's kind of like Brian's class where it was something different that we were bringing in a different way to do things with the classroom. And it gave me that opportunity.
Well, so I'm going to build on that question a little bit. Sabrina just told us about the Develop in Swift Explorations course content that is new from Apple. Mike, what are you doing to leverage that in your classroom?
We're doing quite a bit. In normal years, it would be part of my capstone class, and we would take the students through it and do a challenge-based learning activity where they're learning some code and they're developing an app designing one to solve a problem. And last year with the pandemic, we weren't able to do that because most of my students they all had iPads, but they didn't have a MacBook. They had all kinds of different stuff. But I had a couple of students who said, hey, there's this problem in special ed that they need someone to help them get started with an app. And I asked students for volunteers. I had 3 who volunteered, and they're like, I've never coded before though. Don't worry, I got you. And we actually gave them the explorations book. They did it at home while I'm teaching. The class is going on and doing other things, and they're learning this, and mostly on their own. We're diving into that book and using it to start building their app and building pieces of it. And then that actually springboarded them to ask more questions. And I'd be like, well, okay, jump over to the foundation, the fundamentals book, and go look at chapter 3 for this. And they would jump into the fundamentals book, learn some advanced topic, and then jump back, able to do it. And that was really neat to see in such a crazy time where they're not in front of me. I can't watch them. And so those guides are just, I think they're just amazing for that they give the students that confidence.
I love that it doesn't need to be necessarily in person in a traditional environment to be able to leverage the tools. That's awesome, Mike. Thank you for that. Brian, what are your thoughts? How are you leveraging the Develop in Swift application or Develop in Swift Explorations course content in your classroom?
Well, my students come to us for 2 years. We're a career tech high school, and they're with me about 3 hours a day. So we get through that course in a semester. And my juniors, it's the first experience they have. And a lot of them, they choose to come to our school, and some have dabbled a little bit with HTML. And I have a couple even more advanced students that have done a little bit of Java or more advanced work with some JavaScript. So I have a wide range, but it doesn't matter. They pick up the language, and the language lessons are great, and it gives them just enough without being too in depth to learn and not be too intimidated in the playgrounds. And farther along in the book, we start building some apps, and then the excitement really gets going, because whether we're building the question bot or then the chat bot, and then the meme maker, and finally the element quiz, that really gets them excited. But it gives them enough to build and some basic apps that we as a school, we have a school developer account, which is free and your school could sign up for. And I also manage our iPads, and I know how to create, then we can create custom apps for our school and put them into our, Jamf calls it the self-service app, which is like the school app store. So I can publish them. So we've had a couple kids publish custom apps. Kids go in and create games, just some real basic ones from the explorations course. And we don't allow a lot of games, but because they're made by our students, those kids that make those game apps are heroes to all the other kids in the student population, because there aren't a lot of games they're allowed access to. But if one of their kids made it, so that's really neat. Like I said, I love that it goes just enough to get them learning Swift, and just enough, but not too in depth that there's still stuff to learn when we move on to the fundamentals course.
I love that. I think the thing I'm getting from both of you is just how excited your students are to be able to use these tools and have it be simple, not too overwhelming, but that it's enough to get their feet wet, that they become excited about coding and about the possibilities that they can create things that they haven't seen before. So I wanted to delve into the question. We've talked about the course content. We've talked about teaching coding. What role do you feel that certification plays for these students? Is it important for them to get certified? And if so, why? Mike, do you want to take that one first?
Sure. I really like the certifications, and there's a lot of value to them. We do a couple of certifications in our program, and the Swift one is one of them now. And first off, it gives our students a benchmark where they can see their progress along the way towards getting to that point of writing an app. It allows our administrators actually a chance to kind of see that, what we're learning in the classroom, that there's more than just what this, because I mean, students do portfolios as well. So they can see that they've done things, but they don't know what the learning was. And there's not a benchmark for that without the certification. And it gives them that. It also, it allows my students to be able to say, yeah, I built these things, but look at this level of knowledge that I have. I do have knowledge, not just, hey, I built something and, I didn't download this from the internet. I didn't just copy someone else's code. I've learned this, and it gives them that sense and really puts a cap and tells a whole story with their portfolio, a whole story of what they've learned and what they've done. So I really find a lot of value in it, being that whole, giving that complete story to the students.
That's perfect. Brian, same question over to you. What role does certification play for you and your classroom and your students?
But besides the stuff for the state, all that stuff, the CTE standards, and just past that, the practical stuff that for my students is, I've had students go out and start their own businesses while working through college, because they can make more money building software and running their own businesses. And they use it as, hey, I have these credentials, just like Yak was saying. By the way, hey, Yak, good to see you. It also, I've had a couple students go to university, a local university, which is my alma mater, Go Flashes, and go to the professors, and the school isn't exactly, they teach more Java and based, and they have started some iOS programming courses, which were meant only for seniors. And I had one of my students go there, and as a sophomore, go to the head of the CS department and say, can I get into this course? And the professor said to him, he said, well, you're just a sophomore. This is an upper division senior course. Why do you think that you deserve or you qualify for this course? He says, well, let me show you these credentials I've earned, and let me show you this app I've built. And the professor, head of the department, oh, okay, sure, you can get in. And then he emailed me like 3 weeks later. It's like, Mr. Fowley, this is the easiest A I've ever get, because it's all just stuff you've already taught us. So it was great.
I love that. I love that it's a practical application of skills, and that it's something like Mike was saying that you can demonstrate in a more official way, right? That there's the portfolio, but then you have that additional credential built on top of that, which I think is so valuable. So talking about, students getting excited and using this outside the classroom, I wanted to ask if either of you have hosted app showcases or have a Swift. I think Brian's going to take this one. If you have a Swift coding club on campus, I'm just guessing based on the shirt. that that's something that you guys are doing, and how is that helping to motivate your students?
Well, they're in it whether they want to be or not. When they sign up to come to our career tech program, which is it's called web and app development. So they're in the Swift coding club whether they want to be or not. That's, they have no choice. But what we've done is we have to have an advisory committee for our program. And just so happens one of our students that just graduated a couple years ago, his dad is a software engineering manager at a company in Cleveland, and he has had to hire Swift developers. So we have them come in and pitch their ideas for apps and everything. And, we have students that he's has said, when you get done and you're ready, I have a job for you. So because they have some great ideas and they've built some apps, and all of them, what it does is, because it doesn't matter the language. They're learning computer science, they're learning a language, and it's going to translate to any other, because Swift is such a great language that there, and you can see, I remember being at WWDC a couple times in 2015, and I was sitting in the crowd, and this one developer says, "Oh, I see a little bit of Haskell there," and there are different elements. So they're going to be able to take this language and then translate it to anything else. And what that father of a former student who is the software engineering major is, he has said that he has to pay more for Swift programmers because they're harder to find.
Oh, interesting. I love that it's a basis for other things, but just the rarity of the skills is helpful. And I think that's every teacher's dream, right? Is for a student to walk out of their class and say, you have a job based on what you've been taught. So that's wonderful. Mike, any thoughts from you?
Yeah, we do showcases, and I love them because it gets my students talking with the community, gets them communicating and learning those soft skills, those life skills that they need no matter what they do. I love putting them in front of an audience, and this is a great way for them to do it. We actually will do a preview showcase. We'll do with their prototypes. They'll do prototypes in Keynote starting out early on. We use the app design journal, and they will create the idea for their app. They'll do it in Keynote where they kind of see what it looks like and how it's going to work, get the features together, present this to a live audience of community people, get feedback, start building it from there. And then they do a showcase later with their app. They get up there in front of an audience, talk about how the app has helped and what it's for, what they're doing with it, and present that app. And it's amazing to see that. The last one we actually, a couple of the apps had already been gone to their users. They had built some apps specifically for our special ed department that had a couple of students who had a very specific need, and the students built it for them. So they were able to not only just say, this is what we're wanting to do, or we did. It's like, here's how it helped somebody. And that's empowering for a student to stand there in front of a room of adults and professionals saying, I've done this professional work. Look at what I've done. And it's empowering, and that's all part of that, part of that program and that confidence they get.
I love that. And I think the point that you made about weaving in the soft skills is so crucial, because you can't just walk out of a class saying, I know how to code and be able to get a job, but that it requires communication, right? It requires being able to show your ideas, show your skills in a very practical and natural way, and how important that is to be able to develop that second skill set in addition to the hard skills that you teach in the classroom.
And they learn empathy from it too, from app development, because they're developing this completely for somebody else. It's not for them, it's for someone else going to use it, and they have to learn empathy. And that's such a huge thing. And I love that. I love teaching my kids that.
Yeah, getting them immersed in the community. I think that empathy is so important and so relevant, no matter what industry you go into, right? Being able to connect with your customer and understand their needs is so crucial. So the last question I have before we turn it over to our attendees to hopefully put you in the hot seat a little bit is, what advice would you give to teachers looking to build a new app development or coding program in their school?
Mike, you want me to take this one first, or?
Oh yeah, go for it.
What I would say is a couple things. First, go through the explorations course, build all the apps, go through all the playgrounds, and then go through the fundamentals course, get set up. And maybe even if it's like just a worthless free app, put an app on the App Store. That way you can, the process yourself. And because there are some things you have to figure out along the way. You know, necessity is the mother of all invention. So learning out just because you want to do something and build something, go through that. There is enough in those 2 courses and enough information you will learn that you will be able to build an app with some pretty decent functionality, and do that for yourself. You know, one of the greatest feelings I ever had was first time I put my first app got approved for the App Store. It's just like, oh, I'm an app developer now. And just something I could say. I mean, it was, I look back now and it was cringeworthy, but I did it. The other thing I would say is don't just think of those in a comprehensive district. Don't just think of those math or science kids. Mike and I have friends and colleagues from Westchester University outside of Philly who did a study, and what their studies found was that some of the best coders actually have a language and or art background, because they're able to see the entire picture, or music, language, art, or music, because they're able to see the entire picture. Because coding, you know, that it's like that. It's like trying to see, being a conductor of an orchestra and see how all the parts fit together. So, you know, really look for those kids too. They will be very successful coders.
I love that. I'll have a follow-up question here on that in just a second. But Mike, did you want to share your thoughts?
Yeah, don't be afraid. I jumped into it the first time and actually was going through, I had previewed the materials and I was really going through it with my students. I was like a day ahead of them in class, and we would ask each other questions and they would challenge me and I would challenge them. And we went back and forth as we learned and worked through it and grew. And the kids respected that because they knew that, hey, we can do this. This, you know, it shows that growth mindset. They learned from that. They learned a lot from doing that, from that process. And like Brian said, doing it yourself, you learn so much. Just don't be afraid. It's actually really, it's straightforward. It's easy to do and easy to get into. Just, you know, go do it and have fun. That's the other part. Have fun with it. Give the kids a challenge. Don't, you know, let them, you know, I like to throw community challenges at them. Throw a challenge at them and then step back, because it's going to be amazing what they do when they're excited about, I'm solving this problem, and you don't have to drag them through. When I give them those challenges and let them pick, I want to solve this problem and design an app for it. Even if they don't build the app, just that I am passionate about this problem and I'm designing this app to solve this problem. I don't have to drag them through learning what to do. They're like, I need to learn this. They're coming to me. I had a student, he came up to me and said, I need to learn how to do a database for my app. We're not going to cover databases anytime soon. He goes, yes, but I need it now. Okay, look, go do Firebase and go learn. They got a pretty good tutorial there. You can learn it, get started on this. This was Friday afternoon. He comes back on Monday, goes, wow, yeah, that Firebase tutorial is really easy. I went through it, got it all done. Everything's, I'm done and I'm ready to move on to the next thing. I said, okay, so let's take what you learned and let's start to build this database. He goes, no, you don't understand. I've already built the database and I connected it to my app. I figured it all out this weekend. That's what happens when they're passionate, and you don't have to drag them through it. So do that for yourself. Go try it out, like Brian said, and then give the students a challenge. Let the students pick a challenge that they're passionate about to learn this with, so that they're not learning loops because you told them you need to learn a loop right now. You need to learn an array. It's, oh, I got to solve this problem. They'll dive in. They'll do it for you. They'll do all the hard work for you. Let them do it. That's their job.
That's the teacher's dream, right? That students are coming to them with questions instead of you trying to get them excited. So
that's
yeah,
Mike, that's really empowering though, right? As a teacher, like you're going through it with them and saying like, well, I don't know, but hey, let's figure this out. You know, the one thing I tell my students is, hey, to be a software developer, to be a programmer, you're signing up to become a lifelong learner, because every year Apple releases hundreds, thousands of new APIs and nobody knows all of them. There's not one person in the room who is the expert. You're signing up to like learn for the rest of your life. So start now.
Yeah.
So I wanted to, I mean, your answers have sparked a lot of additional questions, but I wanted to ask one additional question. You talked about how excited your students are once they learn a little bit, they really get engaged. But I think the hardest part is getting the students in the door. A lot of them are, like you mentioned earlier, Mike, they're afraid of coding. They've never done it before. So what can you do to get students who are considering enrolling in your class or who are thinking about what electives to take? How have you guys gotten students involved in coding that are maybe not the traditional computer science students?
A friend of ours that Brian and I've worked with, Douglas Keong, who now teaches over in California. He's teaching Hawaii, rough life teaching in Hawaii.
Yeah.
He found that changing the name of the course, when he changed it from computer science to solving community problems, the kids started signing up more. He didn't change his course. He was still teaching app development and computer science, but they were doing these challenges and they were solving problems, and it brought more kids in, ones he hadn't attracted before, and they were, because that's what they wanted to do. It spoke to them just in changing the name. That's all he did. It's how you sell it, how you market it. And that's what coding is. Coding is not a thing into itself. It's a tool to solve a problem. And
I love that.
So we can bring them in if we, get past the tool part and into the, what are you going to do with this?
Yeah.
That's that empowerment piece again.
Perfect. Brian, any thoughts from you?
We put the word app in the name of our program, and everybody knows what an app is, and everybody wants to build an app or has an idea for an app. And then it was as simple as that.
I love
everybody knows an app.
Yeah, I love that both of your answers relate to marketing. I mean, I'm very biased in that way, of course, since I work on the marketing department, but it really is about showing students the end result, right? That the tool is the means to be able to achieve the creation, that it's not just about, okay, we're going to learn to code just to learn to code, but that it's about what you can do with that. So I think that's perfect. Okay, we're starting to get questions coming into the Q&A. First one that came in, does the level of Swift certified user test correspond to a company's junior position? I don't know if that is something that you guys can answer. You feel like the students who have taken the certified user exam are able to move on directly to an app developer position?
I would say, yeah, depending on the company and what the kind of software they're creating, it could be. I would say the associate level is probably either very junior developer or an intern level. You can get you in the door to get an internship, and then that one. But even if not that, then once you go through the data collections course and you create an app, then definitely I would think that would verify that you can do
Perfect.
Yeah.
Mike, same thought?
I agree.
Awesome. Okay. Another question. I know we've talked about some resources that Sabrina mentioned in the curriculum from Apple. What is your favorite piece that you use with your students, or maybe an additional resource that we haven't talked about here?
My favorite thing to use is I love using the app design journal, and there's a book out. There's actually a curriculum guide that goes with that now, but Apple has it's a keynote deck that goes through designing the app. And I love to use it at the beginning to get the kids excited, to get them thinking about it, and then that driving that want to learn. And I love using that because it makes they can see how all these pieces come together, and it's very visual, it's hands-on, it makes them think about the app more than just a bunch of lines of code, but all of these interfaces and all the different ways that you can use an app. That's one of my favorites to use, and the kids love it too because they get to design and they get to play and create.
I love that. Brian, what are your thoughts? I think that's an awesome resource, Mike. Thank you for that.
Yeah, exactly what Mike said. And Keynote is a developer's best friend. There used to be, it's no longer on the Apple developer website, but there used to be in 2014 WWDC, there was a video called Fake It Till You Make It. And it might be on an online video hosting service that rhymes with YouTube. You might be able to find it there. Anyway, but it's how the development team at Apple actually uses Keynote to prototype apps and put it on their devices and fake it. And so that you can get an idea of what your app would look like. Because what the research shows is that the more time companies spend prototyping, the less time they spend coding, because you know exactly what you want. And that is the starting point of what an app should be, the design.
Awesome. Okay, another question that we have is, what resources have you been able to find for funding your coding program? I know that's one of the barriers a lot of our educators face. So where have you guys tapped into funding? Is there any type of advice that you would give for teachers who maybe have a lack of funding in their school?
For us, it's been tying in with CTE and using that, you know, like I do mine, and it's part of my engineering program, fits in with that. Some of the other schools I know, they'll do it with their computer science program and computer programming, and they will put it inside of that so that they can leverage the CTE funding available, and using that, because it goes with the certifications go along with that and fit in. It's part of that coding, and there's a lot of the states are opening up more opportunities there. So I would say first place, look at CTE if you haven't already, and look in that realm. That'd be the first place I would check.
Thanks, Mike. Brian, did you have any additional thoughts on that?
No, we're a CTE high school, and there's plenty of money for career tech education. Look in your districts, find out who your district CTE coordinator is, and inquire with them, because career tech is well funded by the federal government.
Awesome. Okay. Well, it looks like that is the last question that we got. So I wanted to give Mike, Brian, either of you a chance to share final thoughts before we wrap up. And
I wish I had access to these tools when I was starting out, both learning and teaching. Oh, to be young again.
I love the material. It makes it approachable, but it makes class fun. I've got videos of my kids talking about the fun they were having doing it, and they have fun challenging each other and trying to one up each other, and it just makes it makes it fun. It makes it fun to do that, and that makes, you know, coming to work, it's not a job then. It's, you know, I get to do this, not I have to do this, and that's a neat thing to see.
Perfect. I love that. Well, we had one last question trickle in, so I'll let you guys answer this one. What's the most difficult Swift topic for your students?
What do you think, Mike? Difference between classes and structs or optionals?
Oh wow, yeah, optional.
I love optionals myself. I think it's the most powerful feature of the language, so I love teaching it. But just that implicit, explicit unwrapping of the optional, probably that. That's
the one. Actually, classes got a lot easier for my kids with Swift and with the material. So optionals, yeah.
Perfect. And it looks like we had one additional question come in, and Sabrina's answering that about the pass rate. So I just wanted to throw out before we close that if you have any questions in more detail about the objectives of the exams or the resources available that we've covered at a very high level today, feel free to respond to the follow-up email that we'll be sending out to this webinar with the recording. You're more than welcome to touch base with any of the representatives here at Certiport. We'd be happy to help. And I just wanted to give a big thank you to both Mike and Brian for all of your help today, all of your advice. We're so grateful for you spending a little bit of time on your first week of school back in the classroom, hopefully for both of you to be able to share this advice with our educators. We really appreciate it. So thank you so much for joining us, everyone. We will see you next week for our final month of Swift webinar. In the meantime, feel free to touch base with us and we'll be happy to help out. Thanks, everyone.